All right, this is going to be a speech about the Venezuelan invasion. We're going to see exactly what their mindset is, why they did what they did. I believe the excuse as of right now is gun charges, drug charges, cocaine manufacturing, fentanyl association, and sanctions on Russia and China avoidance. So a little bit of working with the enemy of our allies in Ukraine. We're going to see what's up.
Venezuela. At my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault, and it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault, and it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas to bring outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history. And if you think about it, we've done some other good ones like the attack on Soleimani, the attack on al-Baghdadi, and the obliteration and decimation of the Iran nuclear sites just recently in an operation known as Midnight Hammer, all perfectly executed and done. No nation in the world could achieve what America achieved yesterday, or frankly, in just a short period of time. All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military, working with U.S. law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. It was dark. The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain dark. The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark, and it was deadly. But captured along with his wife, Celia Flores, both of whom now face American justice. Maduro and Flores have been indicted in the Southern District of New York. It's Jay Clayton, for their campaign of deadly narco-terrorism against the United States and its citizens. I want to thank the men and women of our military who achieved such an extraordinary success overnight with breathtaking speed, power, precision, and competence. You rarely see anything like it. You've seen some raids in this country that didn't go so well. They were an embarrassment. If you look back to Afghanistan, or if you look back to the Jimmy Carter days, they were different days. We're a respected country again, maybe like never before. These highly trained warriors, operating in collaboration with U.S. law enforcement, caught them in a very ready position. They were waiting for us. They knew we had many ships out in the sea, just sort of waiting. They knew we were coming. So they were in what's called a ready position, but they were completely overwhelmed and very quickly incapacitated. If you would have seen what I saw last night, you would have been very impressed. I'm not sure that you'll ever get to see it, but it was an incredible thing to see. Not a single American service member was killed, and not a single piece of American equipment was lost. We had many helicopters, many planes, many people involved in that fight. But think of that, not one piece of military equipment was lost, not one service member was, more importantly, killed. The United States military is the strongest and most fearsome military on the planet by far, with capabilities and skills our enemies can scarcely begin to imagine. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world. There's no equipment like what we have, and you see that even if you just look at the boats. You know, we've knocked out 97% of the drugs coming in by sea. 90%. Each boat kills 25, on average, 25,000 people. We knocked out 97%. And those drugs mostly come from a place called Venezuela. We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela, and that includes many from Venezuela that are now living in the United States and want to go back to their country. It's their homeland.
Okay, that's kind of crazy. He's doing this in a way to get oil resources, but at the same time to get people to self-deport and go back home. Little funny. This rollout was indeed something that's wild because a lot of people could not resist against it. It was a very, very well put out mission. You know what I mean? It's not going to end up like the Middle East because a lot of these people in the communist belief systems have already been conquered by other countries with a similar notion that a lot of them don't trust each other and backstab each other to get ahead. And in communism, a lot of Darwinism principles is infighting. So a lot of the time, people just let other people eat each other up inside of the country, and a lot of them don't have the resources, and because of that, they usually resort to virtue signaling, liberalism, and stuff like that. A lot of that leads to a bunch of people getting screwed over by the system. It was supposed to support them, but none of them have the discipline to actually uphold a communistic value, which is why they all collapse almost immediately, since their populist control is always on a very simplistic mindset to get as much people into it. But the simplistic mindset also means when you take the leader, the entire thing falls apart, which you can see again with organizations here in America. When you take out the leader, all of the organization falls apart is due to the fact that the leader itself matters the most. They're the idea maker. They're always the leader of everything. Because of this, they understand not only businesses have leaders, but also countries have leaders. And therefore, everyone underneath them is someone that is depending on them and their leadership in order to get a country moving to where it needs to go. Now, because of this, a lot of the capitalists have always conquered these countries because they don't value their leader. They believe in the working class and the people. And the problem with that is the people in the working class don't have the same education as the person at the top who dedicated their life into leading a country, which is, of course, because of this, they give a lot of false sentiments and populisms telling the people that you're capable enough, you're a working class person, you'll get through this, when in reality what's happening is the bourgeoisie are taking over because they're more intellectually superior in terms of manipulation or propaganda or buying social media to change your perspective, that the entirety of the communistic movement completely collapses just to corporatism and donations and oligarchs as a whole buying out each person. And when they don't buy out the person, they'll use superior intellectual ability to manipulate you, false news, disinformation, and to drive you essentially crazy so that you don't know who to trust and your government falls apart because no one's trusting each other. Divide and conquer. So because of this, a lot of the psyops that work in communism is due to the fact that a lot of them use populism. Populism, of course, takes advantage of the large uneducated people and easy to trick individuals. Because of this, a lot of the communists at the top are extremely wealthy and rich, and a lot of them do not help the people at the bottom, which is an easy divide to create. You have people making over 150K a year just to say that they are poor, telling the poor that they can trust them, which is why when leadership falls apart, they can depend on the same person just on the other side, which would be a counter-revolutionary, which is a capitalist, except they can actually get you jobs and resources and something more effective, which is why a lot of the time the communist movements lose loyalty and support, because the right-wing counter-revolutionaries can actually offer you a job and prospects to a new future, which is why a lot of the time the people in the communistic circles are always virtue signaling that they are poor and came from working classes, but they are actually getting more handouts and more availability to the top of the ladder. Because of that availability, they climb higher on the social ladder, they get more ahead, they sell you more lies that they're going to help everyone. But at the truth, as soon as you take out one of the leaders or arrest them, the entire movement falls apart, because if what they said was true, the entire country would continue fighting. And if it doesn't continue fighting, then they don't have the same mindset. Then the entire perspective of the country falls apart to just the fact that someone with more superior manipulation, logistics, or disinformation or misinformation would simply win because of Darwinism or Darwinist protocols, also known as just God's mandate, which is why the utilization of this resource of just being a better country and taking over communist countries is so easy, is because a lot of them, again, are just rich people creating a royal family inside communism, which is very easy to break considering America came from a monarchy and they've overthrown plenty, and their continuation of CIA and their operations overseas are easy to do when they conduct themselves with evidence as well as the reason to invade, combined with the competency of understanding the psychology of the enemy as well as the understanding of their loyalists around them in order to divide and conquer them, which of course led to using money, drugs, access to more money or resource, as well as the support of anyone who sided with the Western hegemony, that if you side with them, at least your country will exist and your side of the army will be alive. And because of an overwhelming capitulation, because of the superior fire force, a lot of the communistic belief systems would be just to survive the people, because they also would be able to scientifically analyze that the people are not capable of defending themselves and should capitulate immediately. Otherwise, there would be a lot of martyrs and a lot of dead people and a lot of people that cannot carry on the message of their ideology, which of course can be circumvented by a lot of propaganda, again, by the capitalists, which is why the ideology dies and does not flourish. Because you can just buy people's opinion with advertisements, powerful speeches, or just uplifting someone with a bunch of bots on their YouTube channel to put them at the top of the ladder, to so that everyone's opinion is simply uploaded with that person's perspective. Once you understand that, then you'll understand why these operations are so successful, because they can be conducted absolutely anywhere in the world, as long as you have an inferior educated people that you can take advantage of in order to conquer them. And because of this, it is oftentimes very easy for a lot of Western governments, mainly America, to take over countries, because a lot of them utilize a very simplistic way of tribalistically uniting their groups and using mob justice rather than a judiciary or legislator or any sort of executive branch. They instead base their systems on a dictatorship, which has a false sense of democracy, which then leads to a power vacuum of the most unintelligible or unintelligible people, because the people at the top would be easy to conquer on the premise of them just building a royal family. And because of the royal family's building, they don't have a true communistic sense of reality, which is why in America all of the communist virtue signaling is not true communism, because communism would have an actual leader that understands the prospects of what it means to scientifically create a communistic principle through Darwinism, which is more of a Bolshevik ideology, which of course the Bolsheviks of their ideology, not firing a single missile off in Venezuela, would show inferiority due to the Darwinistic principles not taking into effect, due to the fact that none of them actually defended themselves like they said they would in a guerrilla warfare or any sort of other fighting style that could have benefited some sort of resistance in the political sphere.
We can't take a chance that somebody else takes over Venezuela that doesn't have the good of the Venezuelan people in mind. We've had decades of that. We're not going to let that happen. We're there now, and what people don't understand, but they understand as I say this, we're there now, but we're going to stay until such time as the proper transition can take place. So we're going to stay until such time as we're going to run it, essentially, until such time as a proper transition can take place. As everyone knows, the oil business in Venezuela has been a bust, a total bust, for a long period of time. They were pumping almost nothing by comparison to what they could have been pumping and what could have taken place. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. So we were prepared to do a second wave if we needed to do so. We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not. The first wave, if you'd like to call it that. The first attack was so successful, we probably don't have to do a second, but we're prepared to do a second wave, a much bigger wave, actually. This was pinpoint, but we have a much bigger wave that probably won't have to do. This partnership of Venezuela with the United States of America, a country that everybody wants to be involved with because of what we were able to do and accomplish, will make the people of Venezuela rich, independent, and safe. And it will also make the many, many people from Venezuela that are living in the United States extremely happy. They suffered. They suffered. So much was taken from them. They're not going to suffer anymore. The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States. As alleged in the indictment, he personally oversaw the vicious cartel known as Cartel de las Solas, which flooded our nation with lethal poison, responsible for the deaths of countless Americans, the many, many Americans. Hundreds of thousands over the years of Americans died because of him. Maduro and his wife will soon face the full might of American justice and stand trial on American soil. Right now, they're on a ship. They'll be heading to, ultimately, New York, and then a decision will be made, I assume, between New York and Miami or Florida. But we have people where the overwhelming evidence of their crimes will be presented in a court of law. And I've seen it. I've seen what we have. It's both horrible and breathtaking that something like this could have been allowed to take place. For many years after his term as president of Venezuela expired, Maduro remained in power and waged a ceaseless campaign of violence, terror, and subversion against the United States of America, threatening not only our people, but the stability of the entire region. And you all saw it. In addition to trafficking gigantic amounts of illegal drugs that inflicted untold suffering and human destruction all over the country, all over, in particular, the United States, Maduro sent savage and murderous gangs, including the bloodthirsty prison gang Tren de Aragua, to terrorize American communities nationwide. And he did indeed. They were in Colorado. They took over apartment complexes. They cut the fingers off people if they called police. They were brutal, but they're not so brutal now. And I just have to congratulate our military, Pete, and everybody.
Wow, cutting off fingers is wild, but I believe it. A lot of these places are extremely authoritarian, and remember, when you do go populist or a flawed communistic route, which has been shown with the group, the four gangs in communism, it's essentially where Maoism or the more Bolshevik ideology falls apart, and you have a lot of violent people still within the communist regime. A lot of these parties break apart in smaller pieces and result to infighting. A lot of that infighting or discussion of people fighting a very brutalist way to keep the people in line is one of the reasons why communism as a whole fails a lot of the time. A lot of people resort to a lot of threatening the populist and people of working class and the regular people in order to get them in line. And when that happens, a lot of these people act very tough. But like you see with Venezuela, they'll get overtaken very easily. This disloyalty that you see from communism usually comes from a flawed system that is no longer supported by the people, but rather supported by a populist propaganda, which is, of course, lying to the people to get them loyal to you, but they're not truly loyal because they don't actually believe in your mission or your vision. Because of this, a lot of the communistic principles fall apart, just like Maduro. Because Maduro and his team are people that essentially have to threaten people or keep them in line through violence, a lot of the ideology will fall apart. And because of this, there'll be infighting, betrayal, and people don't understand each other. Everyone wants to be in charge. And because of that, they'll take advantage of it because that's the one of the core reasons that capitalism exists. It's the building of understanding that most people in a Darwinistic environment, like being in the forest, will do what's best for themselves. And therefore, in an environment where your leader is the only one you're depending on is gone, cut the head off the snake, the entire system starts to devolve into what it originally was before a leader, which is the building blocks of communism, which is a lot of gangs, mafia, and a lot of corrupt systems, corrupt judges, a lot of corrupt police officers and military members trying to intimidate a lot of people through what I would describe as tribalistic justice or mob justice in order to push people into obedience, which of course leads to when a leadership falls, it's very minimal resistance, very minimal fighting back. And a lot of the people who actually experienced the oppression under the communist authoritarian regime, which would be the similar notion of the four gangs in Mao's fall or replacement of a regime change, you will start to see that the person of peace will start to take over because the person of war is going to be the one that enacts the most harm. And of course, going to be the remnants of the people that they don't like, which use authoritarian oppression and a lot of threats of death onto the people of the working class and regular order. And so because of that, it was very easy of the American government to take over because again he referenced cutting people's fingers off for snitching or being disobedient, I assume is again to the communistic party. So a lot of them were drug related, a lot of them were criminal related in terms of trying to do espionage with Russia and China to avoid sanctions. So a lot of them were going to get a lot of resources, a lot of tendency of looking the other way in order to kill and hurt people. So utilizing that brutality is one of the things that authoritarians use, and it was one of the reasons why a lot of people fight them. So it's an issue they have. One of the main reasons why communists fall is the infighting, because a lot of them want to be the supreme leader.
Buddy, and our National Guard, because the job that they've done, whether it's in Washington, D.C., where we have a totally safe city, where it was one of the most unsafe cities anywhere in the world, frankly, and now we have no crime in Washington, D.C. We haven't had a killing. We had the terrorist attack a few weeks ago. A little bit of a different kind of a threat, but we haven't had a killing in a long period of time, 6-7 months. We used to have two, on average, two a week in Washington, our capital. We don't have that anymore. The restaurants are opening. Everyone's happy. They're going, they're walking their daughters, they're walking their children, their wives. They walk to restaurants. Restaurants are opening all over Washington, D.C. So I want to thank the National Guard. I want to thank our military. And I want to thank law enforcement. It's been amazing. And they should do it with more cities. We're doing it, as you know, and we're doing it in Memphis, Tennessee right now, and crime is down. We've just sort of started a few weeks ago, but crime is down now 77%. And the governor of Louisiana called, great person, and he wanted us to help him, as you know, in a certain very nice part of Louisiana. And we have done that. And it was a rough section, and we have crime down. I understand it's down to almost nothing already after 2.5 weeks. New Orleans, it's down to almost nothing, and we've only been there for 2.5 weeks. Can't imagine why governors wouldn't want us to help. We also helped, as you know, in Chicago, and crime went down a little bit there. We did a very small help because we had no working ability with the governor. The governor was a disaster, and the mayor was a disaster. But it knocked down crime. But we're pulling out of there. When they need us, we'll know. You'll know. You'll be writing about it. And likewise, Los Angeles, where we saved Los Angeles early on, where the head of the police department made a statement that if the federal government didn't come in, we would have lost Los Angeles. That's long after the fires. That's when they had the riot.
This guy's jumping all over the place.
In Los Angeles. We did a great job. Got no credit for it whatsoever, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. We don't need the credit. But we'll be pulling out when they need us. They'll call, or we'll go back if we have to. We'll go back. But we did a great job in various cities. But the place that we're very proud of is Washington, D.C., because it's our nation's capital. We took it from being a crime-ridden mess to being one of the safest cities in the country. But the gangs that they sent raped, tortured, and murdered American women and children. They were in all of the cities I mentioned, Tren de Aragua. And they were sent by Maduro to terrorize our people, and now Maduro will never again be able to threaten an American citizen or any.
And so he's going under this premise. He's going on the premise of the cartels, and all those people are essentially the people, extension of KGB or CIA, where their entire operation is to steal money, kill people, extort, kidnap, rape, and destroy the entire sovereignty or the entire baseline of what capitalism or imperialism is supposed to sell, which is safety and security. And so they're replacing that with chaos. And because of that, he is taking order of what he believes is like the similar of Taliban or Al Qaeda in the Middle East against terroristic actions from a communistic governance that is in full authoritarian control of their people in order to enact what he believes are espionage and sabotage acts on American soil. And so he's doing this as a way of narco-terrorism, but also as a way to describe proxy governance or militias to fight against a communist government that is truly intelligent enough to understand that using these smaller governments, what I would call terrorism, or gangs, in order to attack another nation and make money off of it. So they're trying to use this as a reason to get this the money that Russia and China is using to avoid sanctions, as well as arming the Venezuelans, as well as making sure Venezuelans understand that associating yourself with the enemies of America, as well as using a lot of your espionage and sabotage against the United States of America, is going to warrant a self-defense situation where the United States of America is going to enact itself in what it believes is the most moral path, which is to defend itself against what they believe is a proxy war.
Well, there will no longer be threats. For years, I've highlighted the stories of those innocent Americans whose lives were so heartlessly robbed by this Venezuelan terrorist organization. Really one of the worst. One of the worst, they say the worst. Americans like 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungary from Houston. Beautiful Jocelyn Nungary, what happened to her? They, as you know, they kidnapped, assaulted, and murdered by Tren de Aragua animals. They murdered Jocelyn and left her dead under the bridge. There was a bridge that will never be the same to so many people after seeing what happened. As I've said many times, the Maduro regime emptied out their prisons, sent their worst and most violent monsters into the United States to steal American lives. And they came from mental institutions and insane asylums. They came from prisons and jails. The reason I say both, they sound similar. Actually, prisons a little bit more hostile, a little bit tougher. A mental institution isn't as tough as an insane asylum, but we got them both. They sent from their mental institutions. They sent from their jails, prisons. They were drug dealers. They were drug kingpins. They sent everybody bad into the United States.
So he's assuming again this is an operation to send as much chaos as possible to destabilize the United States. The credibility of this, I don't know how much you can really push for. He's not giving numbers or statistics, which is why I'm giving this a little shaky credibility. But his premise again is to demonize them to look as bad as possible, to make them look like some sort of ninja communist government that's going to send over the worst they can while sabotaging financially through drug trafficking and espionage through killing people, through kidnapping, rapes, and just sending disgusting human beings to destroy the American Western civilization. Which I'm not going to say exactly. It sounds like genocide, murdery vibe, but I think he's going off the narco terrorism to avoid that discussion.
But no longer. And we have now a border where nobody gets through. In addition, Venezuela unilaterally seized and stole American oil, American assets, and American platforms, costing us billions and billions of dollars. They did this a while ago, but we never had a president that did anything about it. They took all of our property. It was our property. We built it. And we never had a president that decided to do anything about it. Instead, they fought wars that were 10,000 miles away. We built Venezuela oil industry with American talent, drive, and skill, and the socialist regime stole it from us during those previous administrations, and they stole it through force. This constituted one of the largest thefts of American property in the history of our country. Considered the largest theft of property in the history of our country. Massive oil infrastructure was taken like we were babies, and we didn't do anything about it. I would have done something about it. America will never allow foreign powers to rob our people or drive us back into and out of our own hemisphere. That's what they did. Furthermore, under the now deposed dictator Maduro, Venezuela was increasingly hosting foreign adversaries in our region and acquiring menacing offensive weapons that could threaten U.S. interests and lives. And they used those weapons last night. Potentially in league with the cartels operating along our border. All of these actions were in gross violation of the core principles of American foreign policy, dating back more than 2 centuries, and not anymore. All the way back, it dated to the Monroe Doctrines, and the Monroe Doctrine is a big deal, but we've superseded it by a lot, by a real lot. They now call it the Donroe Document. I don't know. It's Monroe Doctrine. We sort of forgot about it. It was very important, but we forgot about it. We don't forget about it anymore. Under our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Won't happen. So just in concluding, for decades, other administrations have neglected or even contributed to these growing security threats in the Western Hemisphere. Under the Trump administration, we are reasserting American power in a very powerful way in our home region. And our home region is very different than it was just a short while ago. The future will be, and we did this in my first term. We had great dominance in my first term, and we have far greater dominance right now. Everyone's coming back to us. The future will be determined by the ability to protect commerce and territory and resources that are core to national security. These are core to our national security. Just like tariffs are, they've made our country rich, and they've made our national security stronger than ever before. But these are the iron laws that have always determined global power, and we're going to keep it that way. We will secure our borders. We will stop the terrorists. We will crash the cartels, and we will defend our citizens against all threats, foreign and domestic. Other presidents may have lacked the courage or whatever to defend America, but I will never allow terrorists and criminals to operate with impunity against the United States. This extremely successful operation should serve as warning to anyone who would threaten American sovereignty or endanger American lives. Very importantly, the embargo on all Venezuelan oil remains in full effect. The American Armada remains poised in position, and the United States retains all military options until United States demands have been fully met and fully satisfied. All political and military figures in Venezuela should understand what happened to Maduro can happen to them, and it will happen to them if they aren't just, fair, even to their people. The dictator and terrorist, Maduro, is finally gone in Venezuela. People are...
This dude just did an open threat to all of Latin America. That's kind of hard. I'm not going to lie. He really did not care. He said if it was this easy to take him in a day, none of you are a threat. He thought they were the biggest, baddest out there. Damn. Wow, communism cannot win against American capitalism. It is insane how powerful this country is.
Free. They're free again. It's been a long time for them, but they're free. America is a safer nation. This morning, it's a prouder nation this morning because it didn't allow this horrible person and this country that was doing very bad things to us. It didn't allow it to happen. And the Western Hemisphere is right now a much safer place to be. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank General Raisin Kane. He's a fantastic man. I've worked with a lot of generals. I worked with some I didn't like. I worked with some I didn't respect. I worked with some that just weren't good. But this guy is fantastic. I watched last night one of the most precise attacks on sovereignty. I mean, it was an attack for justice. And I'm very proud of him, and I'm very proud of our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who I'm going to ask to say a few words. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Finally, a commander-in-chief the world respects. and the American people deserve. And as the president said, words can barely capture the bravery and the power and the precision of this historic operation. A massive joint military and law enforcement raid flawlessly executed by the greatest Americans our country has to offer. American warriors are second to none, the best in the world and the best of our country. What all of us witnessed last night was sheer guts and grit, gallantry, and glory of the American warrior. I'm simply humbled by such men. And I tip my hat to our chairman, Dan Raisin Kane, and all those Americans who stood watch last night. Our warriors are the elite of America, and again, President Trump has your back. No other country on planet Earth, and it's not even close, could pull this kind of operation off. And no other president has ever shown this kind of leadership, courage, and resolve, the most powerful combination the world has ever seen. As the president said, our adversaries remain on notice. America can project our will anywhere, anytime. The coordination, the stealth, the lethality, the precision, the very long arm of American justice, all on full display in the middle of the night. Nicolas Maduro had his chance, just like Iran had their chance, until they didn't and until he didn't. He effed around and he found out. President Trump is deadly serious about stopping the flow of gangs and violence to our country. Deadly serious about stopping the flow of drugs and poison to our people. Deadly serious about getting back the oil that was stolen from us. And deadly serious about reestablishing American deterrence and dominance in the Western Hemisphere. This is about the safety, security, freedom, and prosperity of the American people. This is America first. This is peace through strength. And the United States War Department is proud to help deliver it. Welcome to 2026. And under President Trump, America is back. I'd like to welcome now our chairman.
Damn, dude. 2026, they said Latin America's back because they took it. And they can do whatever the fuck they want down there. That's wild. So, peace through strength. Making sure that people maintain themselves and do not do anything dumb by maintaining the fact that if you go against us as a country, we will dominate you completely, and therefore peace is maintained by overwhelming dominance. Wild. Complete dominion. Truly, truly, truly proving once again that the United States of America will remain number one predominantly for probably hundreds, if not thousands of years. Because they don't care what it takes. A Republican Party will go up and invade, but if the Democrat Party wins next, they're still going to work with what they have, and what they have is just an imperialist system. So that imperialist system's still going to operate in the same measure, just a little lesser of the oppressor. But that little lesser of the oppressor is like saying you have slavery, but it's less slavery. But not less slavery as in no slavery, less slavery as in instead of getting whipped, there's no whipped, but you still have the chains. So the dynamic of how much the United States military can dominate other ideologies is so incredibly impressive every time I see it on display.
Chairman Raisin Kane to give a few more details about the operation. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning. Last night, on the order of the President of the United States and in support of a request from the Department of Justice, as the President said, the United States military conducted an apprehension mission in Caracas, Venezuela, to bring to justice two indicted persons, Nicolas and Cecilia Maduro. This operation, known as Operation Absolute Resolve, was discreet, precise, and conducted during the darkest hours of January 2nd and was the culmination of months of planning and rehearsal, an operation that, frankly, only the United States military could undertake. What I'd like to do this morning is talk to you through some of the preparation and the details without compromising any of our tactics, techniques, and procedures. There is always a chance that we'll be tasked to do this type of mission again. Our interagency work began months ago and built on decades of experience of integrating complex air, ground, space, and maritime operations. While the past 2 decades have honed the skills of our special operations forces, this particular mission required every component of our joint force, with soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians working in unison with our intelligence agency partners and law enforcement teammates in an unprecedented operation. We leveraged our unmatched intelligence capabilities and our years of experience in hunting terrorists, and we could not have done this mission without the incredible work by various intelligence agencies, including the CIA, NSA, and NGA. We watched, we waited, we prepared, we remained patient and professional. This mission was meticulously planned, drawing lessons from decades of missions over the last many years, many missions over these last many years. This was an audacious operation that only the United States could do. It required the utmost of precision and integration within our joint force. And the word integration does not explain the sheer complexity of such a mission. An extraction so precise it involved more than 150 aircraft launching across the Western Hemisphere in close coordination, all coming together in time and place to layer effects for a single purpose: to get an interdiction force into downtown Caracas while maintaining the element of tactical surprise. Failure of one component of this well-oiled machine would have endangered the entire mission, and failure is never an option for America's joint force. Those in the air over Caracas last night.
150 planes just tells me they did not want to lose this. Jesus Christ. No wonder he said it was like World War II, because he was going to overwhelm them to such a degree. It's insane. They would not even try to resist it.
Were willing to give their...
Also, a downside of being right next to the world's biggest military is that it's not that expensive to get down there and get things done.
Lives for those on the ground and in the helicopters. Let me talk a little bit about the preparation. After months of work by our intelligence teammates to find Maduro and understand how he moved, where he lived, where he traveled, what he ate, what he wore, what were his pets, in early December, our force was set pending a series of aligned events. Key was choosing the right day to minimize the potential for civilian harm and maximize the element of surprise, and minimize the harm to the indicted personnel so, as the president said, they could be brought to justice. And as the president said earlier today, weather in Venezuela is always a factor this time of the year. And over the weeks through Christmas and New Year's, the men and women of the United States military sat ready, patiently waiting for the right triggers to be met and the president to order us into action. Last night, the weather broke just enough, clearing a path that only the most skilled aviators in the world could maneuver through. Ocean, mountain, low cloud ceilings. But when tasked with a mission, this organization does not quit. At 10:46 p.m. Eastern Time last night, the president ordered the United States military to move forward with this mission. He said to us, and we appreciate it, Mr. President, good luck and Godspeed. And those words were transmitted to the entire joint force. Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air last night. Thousands and thousands of hours of experience were airborne. Our youngest crew member was 20, and our oldest crew member was 49, and there's simply no match for American military might. As the night began, the helicopters took off with the extraction force, which included law enforcement officers, and began their flight into Venezuela at 100 feet above the water. As they approached Venezuelan shores, the United States began layering different effects provided by Spacecom, Cybercom, and other members of the interagency to create a pathway. Overhead, those forces were protected by aircraft from the United States Marines, the United States Navy, the United States Air Force, and the Air National Guard. The force included F-22s, F-35s, F-18s, EA-18s, E-2s, B-1 bombers, and other support aircraft, as well as numerous remotely piloted drones. As the force began to approach Caracas, the Joint Air Component began dismantling and disabling the air defense systems in Venezuela, employing weapons to ensure the safe passage of the helicopters into the target area. The goal of our air component is, was, and always will be to protect the helicopters and the ground force and get them to the target and get them home. As the force crossed the last point of high terrain where they'd been hiding in the clutter, we assessed that we had maintained totally the element of surprise. As the helicopter force ingressed towards the objective at low level, we arrived at Maduro's compound at 1:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:01 a.m. Caracas local time, and the apprehension force descended into Maduro's compound and moved with speed, precision, and discipline towards their objective, and isolated the area to ensure the safety and security of the ground force while apprehending the indicted persons. On arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force in self-defense. One of our aircraft was hit but remained flyable, and as the President said earlier today, all of our aircraft came home, and that aircraft remained flyable during the rest of the mission. As the operation unfolded at the compound, our air and ground intelligence teams provided real-time updates to the ground force, ensuring those forces could safely navigate the complex environment without unnecessary risk. The force remained protected by overhead tactical aviation. Maduro and his wife, both indicted, gave up and were taken into custody by the Department of Justice, assisted by our incredible U.S. military.
You know what's crazy is that if the Democrats end up winning, they're going to have the entire world stage set up for communism. The terrorists are going to allow them to do a capitalistic shift, and they're going to be able to aid any of the countries that are invaded, and they're going to be able to restructure them in any way that they would possibly want. If they don't get the next election, this entire thing could be set up for the left, for all of them to take it over. It's why it's a very interesting concept. If they stay in war, it's going to be a continuous, they're going to depend on the right wing. But if they stay in a concept where everyone's angry or doesn't want to be associated because of the war concept, or they think it's cruel, then they're going to go that way. But I noticed with Trump, he was pushing the moral perspective to go only for the guilty indicted. So he's going on the criminal aspect. So he's going for the moral high ground, which a moral high ground invasion is going to be very tricky because a lot of people are going to say they deserve to be invaded. It's going to be tricky. It's a propaganda game.
With professionalism and precision, with no loss of U.S. life. After securing the indicted persons, the force began to prep for departure. Helicopters were called in to exfiltrate the extraction force, while fighter aircraft and remotely piloted aircraft provided overhead coverage and suppressive fire. There were multiple self-defense engagements as the force began to withdraw out of Venezuela. The force successfully exfiltrated and returned to their afloat launch bases, and the force was over the water at 3:29 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with indicted persons on board. And both Maduro and his wife were embarked aboard the USS Iwo Jima. In closing, what we've witnessed today is a powerful demonstration of America's joint force. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we debrief, we rehearse again and again, not to get it right, but to ensure that we cannot get it wrong. Our jobs are to integrate combat power so when the order comes, we can deliver overwhelming force at the time and the place of our choosing against any foe anywhere in the world. I am immensely proud today of our joint force and filled with gratitude to represent them here today. There is simply no mission too difficult for these incredible professionals and the families that stand by them and support them. As we stand here this morning, our forces remain in the region at a high state of readiness, prepared to project power, defend themselves, and our interests in the region. This operation is a testament to the dedication an unwavering commitment to justice and our resolve to hold accountable those who threaten peace and stability. In closing, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to the brave men and women who executed this mission. Their courage and tireless commitment to our nation are what makes us strong. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, Mr. President.
These are the toughest guys in the world, man. Literally conquering the world.
Well, I don't have much to add to what you've heard now, other than the following points. Nicolas Maduro was indicted in 2020 in the United States. He is not the legitimate president of Venezuela. That's not just us saying it. The first Trump administration, the Biden administration, the second Trump administration, none of those three recognized him. He's not recognized by the European Union and multiple countries around the world. He is a fugitive of American justice with a $50 million reward, which I guess we saved $50 million. And
make sure.
Yeah, exactly. But
Don't let anybody claim it. Nobody deserves it but us.
But I want to be clear about one thing. Nicolas Maduro had multiple opportunities to avoid this. He was provided multiple very, very, very generous offers and chose instead to act like a wild man, chose instead to play around. And the result is what we saw tonight. The other message here is the following. You have a guy, like many people around the world, they like to play games. You have a guy who decides he's going to invite Iran into his country, is going to, do the confiscation of American oil companies, is going to flood our country with gang members, is going to take Americans prisoner and try to hold them for hostage and trade them like he was able to do with the Biden administration. Basically likes to play games all this time and thinks nothing's going to happen.
Damn, so they're painting him out as like a hardcore trickster, and he's already hated by both administrations. It's just an open execution. No one's going to defend him. It's only going to be virtue signaling on killing people. And if he goes the criminal route, they're not killing people. They're killing criminals, which is acceptable to liberals.
And I hope what people now understand is that we have a president. The 47th president of the United States is not a game player. When he tells you that he's going to do something, when tells you he's going to address a problem, he means it. He actions it. I can tell you, I've watched this process now for 14, 15 years, been around it. Everybody talks. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. When I get there, we're going to do this. We're going to take. This is a president of action. Like, I don't understand yet how they haven't figured this out. And now, if you don't know, now you know. Because this is the way it's going to play out. And I think people need to understand that this is not a president that just talks and does letters and press conferences. And, if he says he's serious about something, he means it. And this is something that was a direct threat to the national interest of the United States. And the president addressed it. There's a president of peace, by the way. I told you what I just said earlier. This guy had multiple opportunities to find his way somewhere else and figure out another. He could have been living somewhere else right now, very happy, but instead he wanted to play big boy. And so now, he's got other sets of problems on his hands. And but I think that the message here should be for the world. Look, the president doesn't go out looking for people to pick fights with. He's not generally wants to get along with everybody. We'll talk and meet with anybody, but don't play games. Don't play games with this president's in office, because it's not going to turn out well. And so I hope that I guess that lesson was learned last night, and we hope it'll be instructive moving forward.
Is that a message for Cuba, Mr. President?
Mr. President, Mr. President, Mr. President,
Please.
So who's in power right now?
Well, we're going to be running it with a group, and we're going to make sure it's run properly. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which will cost billions of dollars. It'll be paid for by the oil companies directly. They will be reimbursed for what they're doing, but that's going to be paid. And we're going to get the oil flowing the way it should be. As you know, it was just a minor flow. It was actually a minor flow for what they have. But we're going to run it properly, and we're going to make sure the people of Venezuela are taken care of. We're going to make sure the people that were forced out of Venezuela by this thug are also taken care of.
President, does the U.S. running the country mean that U.S. troops will be on the ground? How will that work?
Well, they always say boots on the ground. Oh, so we're not afraid of boots on the ground if we have to have. We had boots on the ground last night at a very high level, actually. We're not afraid of it. We don't mind saying it, but we're going to make sure that that country is run properly. We're not doing this in vain. This is a very dangerous attack. This is an attack that could have gone very, very badly. Could have gone very badly. We could have lost a lot of people last night. We could have lost a lot of dignity. We could have lost a lot of equipment. The equipment is less important, but we could have lost a lot, and we're going to make sure that this is proper. We're there now. We're ready to go again if we have to, We're going to run the country right. It's going to be run very judicious.
Again, the only reason he won is because of a lot of special operations would have gone in and reconnaissance ahead of time, put up IEDs on roads, and made sure a lot of people were counter ambushed ahead of time, and they would know exactly where they come from. A lot of it would have just been a lot of sabotage ahead of time, and a lot of the landing and grounds on the boots on the ground would have been immediately not resisted on, because the operations behind the scenes would have seen all the groups, all the terror strikes that that were gonna happen, and they would have done preemptive strikes on every single location and group or place of ammunition, arms ahead of time, so that any sort of resistance would be completely squashed. And so all that's left are a bunch of small arms fires, and anything associated with governance or military would have been completely decimated ahead of time. You would have taken out fuse switches, or cars or vehicles wouldn't have been operating right before it happened. It would have been like a ton of vandalism, like protest vandalism everywhere, because it would have been in small pieces and places. It would have been espionage. And this operation would have taken tons of reconnaissance. They would have surrounded it, got the drug trade, got blocked a bunch of cocaine, drone striking the boats, made sure they couldn't get money out, which means they dried them up in income for a lot of the gangs they're fighting. They reduced a lot of the damage and resources that could have been used against them by simply just using overwhelming intelligence, overwhelming discussion, and overwhelming dominion over the psychology of the nation.
Very fairly. It's going to make a lot of money. We're going to give money to the people. We're going to reimburse people that were taken advantage of. We're going to take care of everybody. It's very important. We couldn't let them get away with it. You know, they stole our oil. We built that whole industry there, and they just took it over like we were nothing. And we had a president that decided not to do anything about it. So we did something about it. We're late, but we did something about it. Yeah, please.
Mechanism by which you're going to run the country? Are you going to designate a U.S. official to coordinate?
It's all being done right now. We're designating people. We're talking to people. We're designating various people, and we're going to let you know who those people are.
Would run Venezuela?
Well, it's largely going to be, for a period of time, the people that are standing right behind me. We're going to be running it. We're going to be bringing it back. It's a dead. I talk about a dead country. A year and a half ago, we were a dead country. Now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We're a country doing better than any country anywhere in the world, and it required leadership. Venezuela has a lot of bad people in there, a lot of bad people that shouldn't be leading. We're not going to take a chance that one of those people take over for Maduro. So you can look at, and others. We have fantastic people, including people in the military. So we're going to have a group of people running it until such time as it can be put back on track, make a lot of money for the people, and give people a great way of life, and also reimbursement for people in our country that were forced out of Venezuela.
Rubio would be.
You said earlier today that you weren't going to back Machado to come back and be the opposition leader in your Fox and Friends interview. And then you also mentioned the vice president of Venezuela. Are you going to work with the vice president of Venezuela, or how do you foresee the relationship
Well,
going?
I understand she was just sworn in, but she was, as you know, picked by Maduro. So Marco's working on that directly. He just had a conversation with her, and she's essentially willing to do what we think is necessary to make Venezuela great again. Very simple.
Mr. President, Colombian President Gustavo Petro, a couple weeks ago, he said he's got to watch his ass. And today he said he's not concerned about anything happening to him in the aftermath of this operation. So just what your message is about that.
Well, he has cocaine mills. He has factories where he makes cocaine. And, yeah, I think I stick by my first statement. He's making cocaine. They're sending it into the United States. So he does have to.
You know what's crazy? This whole thing is set up for a civil rights march for a lot of Latinos that were getting a lot of hate, sure, for being like associated republicanism. But a lot of Latinos now have the opportunity to see the cruelty and hatred that a lot of people have for their people and the imperialist core. So this technically opens up a huge precedent for communism everywhere. If the Democrat Party manages to win, and they associate with the tariffs and they try to take over the tariff funding, they'll be able to fund not only Venezuela, but be able to take over all the communistic projects and be able to uplift them in a perfect place. It also allows them to get the racial support and demographics through the Latinos, because a lot of the Latinos are going to be oppressed and treated like trash during war times. So it will force a capitulation within the Latino community with the black community, since both of them are treated as immigrants, invaders, and terrorists from narco terrorism. They will be able to use this in the Democrat Party to unite them with actual news and laws and things that are happening overseas, like the extrajudiciary killings, the cruelty towards people of color and black people, that they'll be able to leverage and use as protests, as well as ways to get people to support them as a more humane option. Whereas the Republican Party is going to have to reduce casualties or kill less people, which of course, in terms of logic and reason of humane principles or what it means to be a human, what is worse in the situation, people who would go out there and march and say less war, or the people who go out there and say less death, because the less death means they're still killing. So less death means they're now going the affordable route, and then no death or no war is going the free housing route, because we want to be home, we want to be safe, we don't want to be out there, we don't want to invade. So a lot of the time this is looks good for fascism or imperialism until you see the huge opening that it leaves for a lot of the leftists and the party and the Democrat Party as a whole, so they can pivot a huge attack against the Republicans in terms of humanity. And because of communism and a lot of its principles, the humane principles are one of the main reasons why a lot of the communists win. So in the long run, a lot of this is going to take is the precedence of morality, and morality will dictate the trajectory of which one of these guys are going to end up winning the election, as well as the ones that are going to be accepted worldwide as the superior ideology in terms of uplifting people, in terms of prosperity. And because of this, it's going to be a discussion of whether to kill and exterminate people that are negative or subtractive to the positive income of the entire economy, or the morality, or the people as a whole in their infrastructure, or it's going to come out to the ability of just a bunch of morality through the discussion of aid, which is usually the Democrats' perspective of trying to uplift people through conversation, diplomacy, and the discussion of equality and the humane principles of which you're trying to treat each other like an equal human being rather than someone you can take advantage of through exploitative means like a capitalist would. They would instead do it through a SOCDEM or communist means, which is going to be more socialist and more based on the domestic rather than imperialist, which would be abroad, which is going to be more neoliberalism or just overall just imperialism, which is right now with a hot invasion, which a hot invasion would mean shooting guns on boots on the ground and killing people actively while trying to maintain the governance as a whole. So this leaves a huge opening for the Democrat Party, for them to really strike at the core of the imperial core, and to strike into what they believe is a fascistic government. And it should be an easy opening, very easy opening.
Watch his ass.
Mr. President, did you notify any members of Congress in advance?
Marco, do you want to talk about that? Because you were involved in it.
Sure. We called members of Congress immediately after. This was not the kind of mission that you can do congressional notification on. It was a trigger-based mission in which conditions had to be met night after night. We watched and monitored that for a number of days. So it's just simply not the kind of mission you can call people and say, hey, we may do this at some point in the next 15 days. But it's largely a law enforcement function. Remember, at the end of the day, at its core, this was an arrest of 2 indicted fugitives of American justice, and the Department of War supported the Department of Justice in that job. Now, there are broader policy implications here, but it's just not the kind of mission that you can pre-notify because it endangers the mission.
Plus, if I could add one thing to that, Congress has a tendency to leak. This would not be good. If they leaked, General, I think it would have been maybe a very different result. But I have to say, they knew we were coming at some point, you know. We had a lot of ships out there. They sort of knew we were coming. We went there. But Congress will leak, and we don't want leakers.
People to watch this all play out live. What was Maduro doing when the U.S. forces entered what I assume would be his home? And also, was there any point where the U.S. was considering if Maduro pushed back or resisted killing Maduro?
It could have happened. It could have happened. He was trying to get into a safe place. You know what a safe place is, all steel. And he wasn't able to make it to the door because our guys were so fast. They went through the opposition so fast. And there was a lot of opposition. You know, people were wondering, do we get them by surprise? Sort of surprised, but they were waiting for something. It was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of gunfire. You saw some of it today. But he was trying to get to a safe place, which wasn't safe because we would have had the door blown up in about 47 seconds, they say on average, regardless of how thick the steel was. It was a very thick door. It was a very heavy door, but he was unable to get to that door. He made it to the door. He was unable to close it.
Holy shit, he went to the door. He was not able to close it. He watched that on the body cam for sure. He watched him run to the door and catch him. That's insane, the amount of time they could have taken to get from the initial incursion to the point of getting to him implies there were thousands of men ready to fight, prepared to defend, and they struck each one such pinpoint precision that every single one fell, and he couldn't even, in the moment that the strike started and he saw the first explosion, got the call that he needed to get into cover. From that moment, he ran from that place to the position of safety, which is like him running to a bunker like Donald Trump, and he intercepted him that quick, which means they did not even get to see or understand or apprehend how much danger they were in. And even as the invasion happened, they did nothing but just try to get to safety and still got caught, which means they're intercepted, logistics were there, the reconnaissance was there. They watched everything. They knew where he was going to go. They knew where his response forces were. They knew where his defenses were. And they knew exactly how much missiles, how much time, and how long it would take to run to the door, get the special forces team there, and then rest him, and then take him back out. And they were able to do this all in this exact moment when you get the call or you see the first explosion, to run downstairs to get to your bunker, or to run to the place you're supposed to if you're somewhere else and you didn't expect attack. And if they're expecting the attack, he was nearby, then he was able to get so in hardcore intercepted. The moment he got the call, they stopped him even though he was nearby. Or the alternative, they caught him off guard and he was somewhere far away and had to drive back to a safe place and then got caught, and they intercepted him because they knew he was somewhere far away, and therefore they countered him in accordance to what would be viable in time over distance, in accordance to how far he would be able to physically travel. And because they intercepted his physical travel in accordance to that velocity of where he could run, they calculated from the initial invasion that they would be able to intercept where he is through forecasting his exact movements, through his plan and scheduling through that day, through reconnaissance, and then be able to intercept his exact path of action of where he was going to head, thereby predicting his movements and stopping him ahead of time and ambushing a leader. It was an algorithm specifically created to encapsulate and capture a presidency of a country.
Go ahead, finish.
Going to be in the time being right now? Do you know his exact
Well,
whereabouts?
eventually, ultimately, in the near future, he's going to be brought to New York.
And where is he going to be held? Where is he going to be held in New York? Do you know?
That's going to be up to the officials that do these things.
Mr. President, the U.S. has something of a mixed track record of ousting dictators without necessarily a plan for what comes afterwards.
Not with
Did
me.
that weigh on your decision?
Well, that's when we had different presidents, but with me, that's not true. With me, we've had a perfect track record of winning. We win a lot, and we win. If you look at Soleimani, you look at al-Baghdadi, you look at the Midnight Hammer. Midnight Hammer was incredible. Right now, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. We have essentially peace in the Middle East because of that. If we weren't successful with Midnight Hammer, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. So, with me, you've had a lot of victory. You've had only victories. You've had no losses. Yeah.
How long do you expect the U.S. to run Venezuela, and how soon do you want Venezuelan people to hold elections?
So I'd like to do it quickly, but it takes a period of time. You know, we're rebuilding. We have to rebuild their whole infrastructure. The infrastructure is rotted. It's actually very dangerous. It's blow-up territory. Oil is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing to take out of the ground. It can kill a lot of people. It has killed a lot of people doing just that. The infrastructure is old. It's rotted. Much of it is stuff that we put there 25 years ago, and we're going to be replacing it. And we're going to take a lot of money out so that we can take care of the country. Yeah.
Are you saying that Secretary Rubio and
Mr. President, China, Russia, and Iran have interests in Venezuela. How does this operation affect your relationships with them when it comes to the oil and
China
drugs?
and Russia, Russia when we get things straightened out. But in terms of other countries that want oil, we're in the oil business. We're going to sell it to them. We're not going to say we're not going to give it to them. In other words, we'll be selling oil probably in much larger doses because they couldn't produce very much because their infrastructure was so bad. So we'll be selling large amounts of oil to other countries, many of whom are using it now, but I would say many more will come.
Are you saying, Mr. President, are you saying that, Mr. President, are you saying that,
Mr. President, thank you. What is your message to the people of Venezuela today? Of course, the civilian population specifically, they have a lot of questions. What is your message to the people of Venezuela?
That you're going to have peace, justice. You're going to have some of the riches that you should have had for a long period of time. It was stolen from you. But you're going to have peace, and you're going to have safety. You're going to have justice. You're going to have a country. You're going to have a real country. You're going to have potentially a great country. You know, if you go back 20 years, maybe even a little longer ago, that was a great country. And they destroyed it. Remember I said that if we lose this election, the United States will be Venezuela on steroids. That's what would have happened. Had we lost the election, the 2024 election, we suffered so badly. When you look at the border from 2020, what they did, what Joe Biden administration did to our country should never be forgotten. But if we had to go through another year of that, we would be exactly where Venezuela was in terms. I used to say, if they win, we're going to be Venezuela on steroids, and that's what would have happened.
President, thank you. Are you saying that Secretary Hegseth and Rubio are going to be running Venezuela, and will you be sending in U.S. military
They're going
troops
to be
to
a
provide?
team that's working with the people of Venezuela to make sure that we have Venezuela right. Because for us to just leave, who's going to take over? I mean, there is nobody to take over. You have a vice president who's been appointed by Maduro, and right now she's the vice president, and she's, I guess, the president. She was sworn in as president just a little while ago. She had a long conversation with Marco, and she said, we'll do whatever you need. I think she was quite gracious, but she really doesn't have a choice. We're going to have this done right. We're not going to just do this with Maduro, then leave like everybody else, leave and say, let it go to hell. If we just left, it has zero chance of ever coming back. We'll run it properly. We'll run it professionally. We'll have the greatest oil companies in the world go in and invest billions and billions of dollars and take out money, use that money in Venezuela. And the biggest beneficiary are going to be the people of Venezuela. And also, I can't stress this strongly enough, the people that got thrown out of Venezuela that are now in the United States, and frankly, some want to stay and some probably want to go back, yeah.
In the country, and were any of the detained Americans?
Well, right now they're
arrested
very
last
protected because nobody's going to mess with us. They're very protected. The people of, and we let them know that you better not touch one of them.
Are you concerned that bad elements of the Maduro regime will remain in place?
Well, we know who they are. We're on them, and they're acting much differently now than they would have acted 2 days ago. Okay, wait, behind you, please.
Mr. President, why is running a country in South America America first?
Well, I think it is because we want to surround ourselves with good neighbors. We want to surround ourselves with stability. We want to surround ourselves with energy. We have tremendous energy in that country. It's very important that we protect it. We need that for ourselves. We need that for the world. And we want to make sure we can protect it. Yes, sir. Please, go ahead.
Yeah, is there a message here for Cuba and Diaz-Canel?
Well, Cuba's an interesting case. Cuba is, not doing very well right now. That system has not been a very good one for Cuba. The people there have suffered for many, many years. And I think Cuba is going to be something we'll end up talking about because Cuba is a failing nation right now, very badly failing nation. And we want to help the people. It's very similar in the sense that we want to help the people in Cuba, but we want to also help the people that were forced out of Cuba and living in this country. Do you want to say something about that, Marco, please?
Well, I mean, I just gave you a statement a few minutes ago about, when the president speaks, you should take him seriously. So suffice it to say, Cuba is a disaster. It's run by incompetent, senile men, and in some cases, not senile, but incompetent nonetheless. It has no economy. It's in total collapse. And by the way, they were, all of the guards that helped protect Maduro, this is well known, their whole spy agency, all that were full of Cubans. I mean, it's amazing. This poor island took over Venezuela in some cases. One of the biggest problems the Venezuelans have is they have to declare independence from Cuba that tried to basically colonize it from a security standpoint. So, yeah, look, if I lived in Havana and I was in the government, I'd be concerned, at least a little bit.
Cutting off the oil flow to Cuba from Venezuela?
Well, the president already announced a week ago that anything that's sanctioned, it's sanctioned oil, it's not going to be allowed to get there. So that's a pre-existing.
The answer is yes. Yes.
Opposition leader Machado, and have you been in contact with her?
No, we haven't. No, we haven't.
Mr. President.
What's crazy is during an era of warfare, the most inhumane questions demand the most humane answers. And because of this, the party that will preach the most humane answers will always be able to push this understanding of legislative rights, as well as during the era of Vietnam for the civil rights, that if you push this mercy or understanding that we should not go to war, you start to appeal to even the people on the right wing that we're not spending our money right, we're killing people, and we're doing something evil, which is why humanity and pushing toward humanity is what's going to win against this fight. Because of this, the Democrat Party should be pushing hard for 100% humanity, since now they're going to be subtracting against their humanity and the Republican Party, since they're using the most inhumane answers to the most humane questions, which is the humane question, what do we do about a country that needs help? And the answer is bomb them. Whereas the Democrats' question is going to be, how do we stop killing people? It's going to be, stop funding the war. And because of this, it's going to be predicated or based upon which party is going to win, based on mercy or humane. And therefore, the most brutalist or most Darwinist principled people who want to slaughter and kill people and push people out are going to go right-wing Republican because they're insecure, scared, filled with fear. And these are usually the people that were counter civil rights movement. And then the Democrat Party is going to pick up the mercy, which is going to be pro people of color rights, pro domestic trade instead of just invading. No neoliberalism, but maybe a preferred more sense of aiding with the trade. So it's going to be less invasion, less killing people. It's going to be less murder as a whole, which less murder applies to the civil rights movement because that's when they were getting killed and oppressed. And it's going to allow a contrast of every single ideology that they have here in America through the imperial core that attacks people of color from those countries that are being attacked. Therefore, the entire attack and all of their tactics of divide and conquer and propaganda can be utilized by the Democrat Party to show them that their loyalties and to humanity is what the Democrat Party is more about, whereas the Republicans are more into the Darwinistic, brutalist principles, which teach them that they're not really loyal to humanity, but rather prosperity through money, and therefore money is more humane in their eyes, and therefore more money, more humanity, whereas a lot of the Democrats believe a lot less death equals a lot more humanity because human life is preserved, and therefore human life being preserved becomes their message or their narrative. They're now the party of love, the party of mercy, the party of acceptance, whereas the party of the Republicans can now go down the path of the party of fascism, discipline, and glory, which is a lot more of an imperialist, fascistic perspective on how to take over the world, which of course is going to lead down a path of a lot of fascistic thinking, a lot of brutalism, a lot of cruelty, and a lot of discipline, because once you get into the mindset of cruelty, you have to show mercy to show that your now humane answer, which is now an inhumane one, is going to be kill less rather than not kill at all, which is now going to twist all of your equations into one that asks a humane question is, how do we fix this, which is humane, you want to fix a problem, but then the solution is now going to be inhumane, which is going to be subtracting human life. And therefore the equation of prosperity on the Republican side is a subtractive one, and the equation of prosperity on the leftist side is one of an additive in accordance to human life value, as well as the tax value, as well as the prosperity value of all economic sectors. And therefore the spending, budgeting, and therefore the management of the tariffs or the international economy through the United States of America would be better handled in the hands of the Democrat Party, because they are at least adding to the human factor and not subtracting through warfare. And therefore the attacks on Iran and the attacks on Venezuela would be subtractive in the sense of imperialism, but additive in the sense of money overall. But in the sense of humanity, they would rather support the Democrat Party, even though they won't get as much money in the immediate sense, because it won't be immediate through warfare. It will take a little bit longer through diplomacy and discussion and reform. And therefore, they're going for the quicker answer on the Republican side, which leads to inhumane answers, which is quick death, but money quicker. And then the leftist side is going to be longer to get the money, but you're going to have more human life and no one's going to die, and it's going to take more time to understand the equation of prosperity through discussion. And then therefore you have the party of discussion and party of humanity on the left, and then you have the party of war, the party of instant gratification or conquering on the right. And therefore the one that has always won in the in the Darwin principles is going to be the one that conquered the forest in the first place, which is going to be the first human to establish civilization, which is also going to be the first one to do the most inhumane things to establish the most humane laws. And therefore the inhumane question and humane answer afterward of that is going to be the conqueror's mistakes and adhering to what they did wrong, which is the Geneva Conventions, after which they have done the war crimes. And therefore they're learning from their mistakes through action, whereas the Democrat left is learning through the reform and the observer effect. Therefore they're going to sit there and wait until the action happens, and whether they are there or not, what the action itself is going to happen, and therefore they're going to benefit from it through the observer. And therefore this concept, whether they're there or not, it vibrates or they hear the sound, is dependent on their perspective, whether they are there to actually adhere to the commands or demands that they deem as fascistic to keep themselves pure for the election in the Democrat Party, to keep the humane principles in their perspective, which will allow for a lot more diverse cultural integration in our society, since it will show genuine humane care for people dying and being killed, rather than the one now which is more discussion of war, not war, but criminality in America, where they feel they are justified in arresting illegal activity or people who are considered illegal as a person.
Mr. President, on Monday...
Oh, I think it would be very tough for her to be the leader. She doesn't have the support within or the respect within the country. She's a very nice woman, but she doesn't have the respect.
Mr. President, is it possible that the U.S. ends up administrating Venezuela for years?
Well, it won't cost us anything because the money coming out of the ground is very substantial. So it's not going to cost us anything. We will. Well, we want safety there. We want to be surrounded by countries that aren't housing all of our enemies all over the world. That's what that was happening, and you don't want to have that. But we're going to be rebuilding, and we're not spending money. The oil companies are going to go in. They're going to spend money. We're going to take back the oil that, frankly, we should have taken back a long time ago. A lot of money is coming out of the ground. We're going to get reimbursed for all of that. We're going to get reimbursed for everything that we spend. So it's going to be a very important. This is a very big evening that took place last night. We have to be surrounded by safe, secure countries, and we also have to have energy. Very important. We have to have energy that's real energy, not where they're getting 4% and 5% of the energy out of the ground. You take a look. It was such a disaster. So what's going to happen with Venezuela, I think, over the next period of a year, is going to be a great thing, and the people of Venezuela will be the biggest beneficiaries.
Going to send in U.S. military.
Mr. President, thank you. What did you last speak to Maduro about when you spoke? And is the
Well,
US
I don't want to
at
get
war
into
with
the
Venezuela?
conversations, but I did have conversations with him, and I said, you got to surrender. And I actually thought he was pretty close to doing so, but now he wished he did, yeah.
You said that Maduro is responsible for drug trafficking. You recently pardoned the former president of Honduras, who was convicted of many drug trafficking. Can you explain how these two situations are different? And would you ever pardon Maduro?
I endorsed, as you know, the winning president, the man who won in Honduras. I endorsed the man who won in Chile. I endorsed the man who won in Argentina. And we are doing very well with that whole group. What the man that I pardoned was, if you could equate it to us, he was treated like the Biden administration treated a man named Trump. That didn't work out too well for them. This was a man who was persecuted very unfairly. He was the head of the country. He was persecuted very unfairly. And there are a number of them. And we felt that it was a very unfair situation that happened to him. He's also a party member of the man who won. So obviously the people liked what I did. And one of the reasons that was done is because of the fact that the party in power felt very strongly that that man was treated very badly. I studied it very quickly, and then I studied it in great detail. I went to a lot of the people standing behind me, and they felt that that man was persecuted and treated very badly. That's why I gave him a pardon.
You referenced boots on the ground earlier. Can you just sort of button this up? Do you envision the U.S. military having a presence in Venezuela as the U.S. runs that country?
No, we're going to have a presence in Venezuela as it pertains to oil, because we have to have, we're sending our expertise in. So you may need something, not very much. But no, we're going to be taking out a tremendous amount of wealth out of the ground. And that wealth is going to the people of Venezuela and people from outside of Venezuela that used to be in Venezuela. And it goes also to the United States of America in the form of reimbursement for the damages caused us by that country. So I want to thank you all very much. Thank you. Do you have one? Yes, please. You were so nice before. I'm going to give you the final question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr.
Unless
President.
it's a bad question, in
It's
which
about
case
Putin.
I'll go one word. It's about who?
It's about Putin, if you want.
About Putin. Well, that's always nice
You had
to
a
talk
phone,
about Putin.
You had a phone call with him
Yeah.
on Monday. Did he talk at all about Maduro? Did y'all talk about this?
No, we didn't.
And
We
then,
never spoke about Maduro.
Are you mad at him right now? I mean, there's this
I'm not
intelligence.
thrilled with Putin. I'm not thrilled with Putin. He's killing too many people. I thought that would be so. I settled 8 1/4 war. You know what the 1/4 was? Thailand and Cambodia. I did it again. They broke out, and I did it in about 5 hours, and I settled it. I'm giving myself 1/4, so I'm up to now 8 1/4. In other words, I settled the war, but then they broke out. They had a pretty bad breakout over the last 4 days. I got them to go back to peace, so I only give 1/4. I thought the easiest one would be, one of the easier ones would be Russia, Ukraine. It's not, and they both have done some pretty bad things. And look, that's Biden's war. That's not my war. But I want to stop the lives. Did you see where last month 30,000? It was 27,000 the month before. 30,000, mostly soldiers, were killed this last month. 30,000. I want to stop that. You know, I got NATO to pay 5% instead of the 2% that they weren't paying. They weren't paying 2, now they pay 5. And we send them a lot of munitions. We send them a lot of things, missiles and various other things, a lot. And they pay. The United States is not losing money. We're probably making money on that. It's the last thing I care about. I just want to stop all those people. We're losing 25, 30,000 human beings. They come from 2 places that are very far away. But if I can stop, because it's something I've been pretty good at doing, deals, I guess. It's all a deal. Life is a big deal. But if I can stop that war and stop 30,000 young people, in addition to the fact that people are being killed in Kiev, people are being killed in other cities throughout.
What's crazy is the algorithm they used to forecast where he's going, like the trajectory of where he was heading. If you took like a week out of his life and you cut it in half, and you said one team take advantage of what he's going to do tomorrow and track it with algorithms and everything he does, and then try and predict the next week after. If you took that exact thing and reversed it and then said, okay, now predict what he did before by predicting the future and see what he did before and see how accurate it is compared to the team that analyzed it before, you might be able to analyze not only the future, but the past actions of what someone was doing in accordance to an algorithmic understanding of not only the functional behavioral patterns that a person would do, but the sentience impression that they would have gotten from their environment and past experiences. And therefore, they're developing what I believe is some of the most advanced algorithms in order to take a country and predict a person's movement, but not only where they are headed, but also where they've been. And because of that, they're not only be able to predict the future, but the past in forecasting and warfare concepts. And if you actually take this into like a deeper boson particle level, and you get a little nerdy with it with quantum physics, you could technically say that that same algorithm can be applied to the atom crashing into the other atom, and you could reverse it, and you can track all the atoms backwards and make a trajectory of understanding of forecasting where they're going to be or forecasting the past, and therefore you can technically start to simulate the past or the future, and therefore be able to see a literal simulation of what that person's reality is going to be through mathematics and the forecasting of mathematics in and of itself. And therefore this understanding of this warfare and how they were able to succeed is kind of admitting to the world that they have one of the most sophisticated algorithms that are there in order to capture diplomats or any of the leaderships of other countries by predicting their entire nature, forecasting not only the future but the past as well, thereby putting them in a pincer attack of extreme intelligence over their enemy or adversary, which is why this is such an impressive feat through the governance, because this algorithm is technically open and out there for everyone to use. However, it was used specifically in order to capture a president, which is one of the most impressive precedents of how these mathematics is used with supercomputers, as well as forecasting people's movements, their food habits, or where they're going to go eat, watch TV, watch shows, what they're drinking. And as soon as you get more variables down in their life and you can predict the future, you can predict the past. So if every Tuesday I drink a soda, then the past week, the Tuesday I drink a soda. And that's predictable by the factor of a variable of chaos. And the variable of chaos is, of course, freedom of will, where that time something came up or something was planned, and therefore you're able to predict that as well through the past and the future. And therefore this algorithm that they sort of snitch on themselves with, because one day capturing the president would mean you knew every single thing they were going to do, where they were going to go, what they were eating, what they were drinking, where they were going to bathroom, where they're sleeping, who they were sleeping with, and every single detail in there, you will be able to put it into an equation of an algorithm and put it into a supercomputer in order to predict the future and the past of the person, in order to get a full profile, in order to predict what they're going to do, what they're going to say, and when they're going to say it. And therefore you're going to be able to predict the exact action and moment that it's going to happen, and therefore guarantee absolute victory over a mathematical level of not only military genius but scientific perception of how human interactions work.
A much smaller number, but they're being killed, viciously killed. So I'm not happy about it. I thought that would be something that would get solved. We have Mr. Witkoff here. I think that we're making progress, but that's a war that should have never happened. If I were president, it would have never happened. Putin says it. Everybody says it. If I were president, that would have never happened. But I inherited that war. That was Joe Biden, Zelensky, and Putin. I came into the situation, and it's a mess. And I will say this. I watched an operation last night that was so precise, that was so brilliant. I mean, it was incredible. If we had our people, like this general, and our people involved, that war would not have gone on very long, that I can tell you. That war, to use an old term, that war has become a bloodbath, and we want it to get stopped. Thank you very much, everybody.
fascinating conclusion to what I believe. They also turned off transponders of planes because Congress was going to leak what was going to happen and snitch on people. Understandable. And so it was seen as something that would have been completely dominant in the ideology of what to do against another party inside of the government. He pretty much pulled a Kaiser. He took the army without permission, but at the end, when they try to hold him accountable, he's going to pull out all the evidence, and the evidence is going to be sound, and therefore he's going to be clean in the courts, and they're going to try to question it, but he's going to be completely fine. Fascinating political science. One of the what I believe is one of the most impressive and truly genius incursions and the most genius invasion I've ever seen. However, they technically opened the entire world and door to the Democrat Party taking over. So this is like a huge move for them. We'll see how it plays out.